The night fire crackled, and the storyteller lifted his eyes to the circle of listening faces. His voice came slowly, heavy with the weight of memory. My children, some stories are told so people may laugh, but others are told so people may never repeat the mistakes of those who came before them. This is one of those stories. Long ago, there was a village called Umuoka, a place blessed with fertile land, strong rivers, and people whose laughter once carried far into the night. But something happened in that village that turned joy into silence, and for 10 long years not a single child was born there. Imagine a place where no newborn cry wakes the night, where no naming ceremony fills the air with drums, where no mother sings a lullaby beside a fire. That was Umuoka. If you enjoy stories that carry the wisdom of our ancestors, remember to subscribe to African Folk Tales and listen closely, because hidden inside every old story is a lesson that may save someone's future. Now listen carefully, because this story was once whispered around fires like this one, passed from elder to child like a sacred warning. Umuoka was not always a village of silence. In the years before the strange curse, children filled every compound. They ran along red earth paths chasing chickens, climbed mango trees with scraped knees, and played beside the river until their mothers called them home at sunset. The village festivals were loud and joyful. Drums thundered under the moon. Women danced with babies tied to their backs, and old men smiled proudly at the sight of the next generation growing strong. The midwives of Umuoka were respected women because they brought life into the world. Their huts were never quiet. Almost every moon another child arrived, and the air of the village carried the sound of newborn cries like a blessing from the ancestors. But one season something strange happened. Months passed without a birth. At first the people did not worry. The elders said the spirits sometimes move slowly. They told the villagers to be patient. The second year passed, and still no baby came. Now the midwives began to whisper among themselves because their hands had grown idle and their herbs remained untouched. Women prayed harder at the shrine of the earth goddess. Men sacrificed goats and poured palm wine into the soil, asking the ancestors for mercy. Yet the silence remained. By the 5th year the people no longer spoke about it openly. Mothers lowered their voices when children asked questions. Fathers stared into the night fires without answers. Traders from other villages began to whisper that Umuoka was cursed. The words traveled from market to market like dry grass catching fire. Still the elders of Umuoka said very little. When younger men demanded explanations, the chiefs simply warned them to respect tradition and stop asking dangerous questions. Years continued to pass. The laughter of children faded from memory. By the 10th year the village felt like a place holding its breath. Houses once filled with babies had become quiet compounds where only the wind moved through the doorways. Yet the strangest thing was that the elders did not seem surprised. Their faces carried the look of men guarding a secret too heavy to speak. Among the villagers lived a quiet girl named Amara who had grown up during those silent years. She had never seen a newborn baby in her entire life. She often wondered what it sounded like when a child first cried. The older women sometimes spoke about the past with sad smiles, telling stories of how the village used to celebrate births with songs that lasted all night. To Amara, those stories sounded like legends from another world. One evening, when the sky burned orange behind the forest and shadows stretched across the ground, the elders gathered for a meeting beneath the great iroko tree in the village square. Amara followed her grandmother there, but sat quietly behind a low clay wall where the elders could not see her. Their voices were serious and low, the way people speak when the truth is too dangerous for open ears. The oldest elder finally spoke, his voice shaking like a tired drum. He said they could not keep the secret forever. Another elder answered with fear in his voice, saying that if the younger generation ever discovered what had been done, the spirits themselves would demand justice. The words hung in the air like dark clouds. Then one man whispered something that made Amara's heart stop beating for a moment. He said the curse of Umuoka began the day they buried the crying child beneath the iroko tree. The fireflies drifted through the night air as Amara struggled to breathe quietly. A buried child. The words echoed inside her mind like thunder. She realized that the silence of the village, the missing children, the fear in the elders' voices, all pointed to something terrible that had happened long ago. And in that moment she understood that the truth behind the 10 silent years was not a mystery of the spirits, but the shadow of something the elders themselves had done. The wind rustled the leaves of the iroko tree as if the earth remembered everything. Amara did not yet know the whole story, but she knew one thing with certainty. The secret buried beneath that tree was the reason Umuoka had not heard a child's cry for 10 years, and the moment that truth came into the light, the fate of the entire village would change forever. The fire burned lower, and the storyteller's voice dropped until the listeners leaned closer to hear him. The night Amara heard the elder's secret, sleep refused to visit her. The words circled her mind like restless birds. A buried child beneath the iroko tree. How could such a thing be true? The iroko tree stood at the center of Umuoka, older than the oldest elder, its roots deep and twisted like the fingers of time. Children once played beneath its wide branches. Festivals were held there. Disputes were settled there. Yet now the tree stood in silence, avoided by many villagers after sunset. Amara lay awake on her mat, listening to the wind move through the night. If the elders had buried a child, then the curse upon Umuoka was no accident. It was punishment. But punishment for what? At dawn, Amara rose quietly before the rest of the compound stirred. A pale mist still covered the village paths as she walked toward the square. The iroko tree stood alone in the morning light. Massive, still, watching. For a moment fear tightened around Amara's chest. She remembered the elders' warning that some truths were not meant for young ears. But curiosity is stronger than fear in the heart of the young. She stepped closer. The ground around the tree looked ordinary. Dry earth, fallen leaves, nothing that suggested a terrible secret slept beneath it. Yet something about the air felt heavy, as if the soil remembered. Amara knelt and placed her palm against the ground. Cold, silent. "Who are you?" she whispered. Behind her a voice suddenly spoke. "You should not be here." Amara jumped and turned quickly. Standing a few steps away was her grandmother, Mama Ifyinanya. The old woman's face was serious, the deep lines around her eyes tight with worry. "Grandmother," Amara said softly, trying to steady her voice. Mama Ifyinanya looked toward the iroko tree, then back at the girl. "I have lived many seasons," the old woman said slowly, "and I have learned that some secrets carry the weight of curses." Amara hesitated, but the question inside her heart refused to stay silent. "Grandmother, was there truly a child buried here?" The old woman's shoulders stiffened. For a long moment she said nothing. The morning wind moved through the leaves above them with a hollow whisper. Finally Mama Ifyinanya sighed, a deep tired sound. "I prayed the young ones would never ask that question." Amara's heart beat faster. "So it is true." The old woman lowered herself slowly onto a nearby stone. Her voice came out like a story she had carried too long. 10 years ago, before the silence began, a child was born in Umuoka under strange signs. Amara listened carefully. The child's mother, the grandmother continued, was a young widow named Adiz. Her husband had died months before the birth. Many people in the village already looked at her with suspicion. "Why?" Amara asked. "Because people often fear what they do not understand," Mama Ifyinanya replied quietly. The old woman's eyes drifted toward the iroko tree. The night the baby was born, a storm covered the sky. Thunder rolled across the land, and lightning struck the forest again and again. When the midwife finally carried the baby outside, something frightened the villagers. "What happened?" Amara whispered. Mama Ifyinanya's voice trembled slightly. The baby did not cry like other newborns. Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" "It laughed." The word hung between them. Amara blinked. "A newborn baby laughed?" "Yes." The grandmother nodded slowly. "Not once. Not twice." The child opened its eyes and laughed loudly while thunder shook the sky. A chill ran down Amara's spine. "In those days," Mama Ifyinanya continued, "fear ruled many hearts in Umuoka. Some elders believed the child was not human. They whispered that it was a spirit sent to bring misfortune. "But that is foolish," Amara said quickly. The old woman nodded sadly. "Yes, foolish. But fear makes wise men act like frightened children." "What did they do?" Mama Ifyinanya's eyes filled with pain. The council of elders gathered that same night beneath this tree. Amara felt her chest tighten. "And they decided the child was dangerous." The words came slowly, heavy. They said if the baby lived, Umuoka would suffer terrible disasters. Amara stared at her grandmother in disbelief. They killed it. The old woman's voice cracked. No. A brief silence followed. Then she whispered the truth. They buried the child alive. The world seemed to stop moving. Amara felt the air leave her lungs. Alive. Mama Ifyananya nodded, tears gathering in her tired eyes. The baby kept laughing while they dug the hole. Some of the elders believed that laughter proved it was a spirit. And the mother? Amara asked. What happened to her? The old woman closed her eyes. When Adiz realized what they planned to do, she screamed and begged them to stop. She swore the child was a blessing from the ancestors. But the elders would not listen. The wind rose, suddenly through the branches above them. They took the baby from her arms and buried it here beneath the iroko tree. Amara felt cold all over. The mother cursed them. Mama Ifyananya continued softly. She cried that the spirits would judge the village for killing an innocent child. Another long silence fell. Then Amara whispered the question that had been burning in her chest. And after that, no children were born again? Mama Ifyananya slowly nodded. That very year the silence began. Amara looked down at the ground beneath the tree. The soil seemed darker now, heavier. What happened to the mother? She asked quietly. The grandmother's voice became even softer. No one knows. She disappeared the same night. The wind moved again, but this time it sounded almost like distant laughter. Amara's heart pounded. If the curse truly came from that terrible night, then the spirit of that child might still be waiting for justice. And somewhere beyond the village, the mother who cursed Umuoka might still be alive, watching, waiting. The storyteller leaned closer to the fire, because what the villagers of Umuoka did not know was that the truth they buried beneath the iroko tree had not died. It had only been waiting.